Alright, this is your notes for the Second Amendment. Throughout the video, I will ask you to pause and work with each other in your groups. The learning objectives, we're going to look a little bit at the selective incorporation, which involves the 14th Amendment in your Bill of Rights. We're also going to look at how the Supreme Court attempts to balance claims of individual freedom with laws and enforcement procedures that promote public safety and order. Quick look at the Second Amendment. It is a well-regulated militia, and being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. First, I want you guys to consider this question. Is unrestricted gun ownership a fundamental right? Pause the video and have a discussion with your group. Next, I want you and your group to answer these 4 statements with a yes or a no. Guns should be allowed in all public places, yes or no? It is reasonable to restrict gun ownership from convicted felons, yes or no? State governments can regulate the types of guns and ammunition available to private citizens, yes or no? It is reasonable for government to restrict access for all in the name of public safety, yes or no? Quickly have a discussion about those 4 statements. Now, in your groups, you're going to look at a couple different scenarios. So there's 2 cities here, hypothetical scenarios. The first city, Gotham City's crime rate is 193% higher than the national average on violent crime and 90% higher on property crimes. The second city, Metropolis homicide rate has surpassed that of 2 other cities. Youth violence is also on the rise and makes up 80% of the violent crime. In 2016, Metropolis had recorded more homicides and shooting victims than 2 other cities combined. In your groups, answer this question. If you were crafting the law targeting these problems, what would you do? Pause the video and discuss with your group members. Now, looking at those 2 cities, here's some facts of the case. In Gotham City, Bruce Wayne lived in a gang-infested area. Bruce Wayne was a special police officer of Gotham who was authorized to carry a handgun while on duty. He applied for a 1-year license for a handgun he wished to keep at home, but his application was denied. Wayne sued Gotham. He sought an injunction against the enforcement of the relevant parts of the code. In Metropolis, Clark Kent, an experienced hunter, legally owned shotguns. But he believed that it was too unwieldy in the event of a robbery and wanted to purchase a handgun for personal home defense. Here, he was unable to legally own a handgun. Clark Kent, another Metropolis resident, sued the city for violating the Constitution. After looking at the text and the facts of the case, answer the following questions. First off, what was the fundamental right that are in question here? And second, did the government cross the line between guaranteeing liberty and maintaining order? Pause the video and answer in your group. Now we're going to use the 2 cases and look at the arguments. We're going to look at the arguments for Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent as well as the 2 cities. These arguments are on your note sheet. While reading the arguments, rank the arguments that you find most compelling. In your group, answer the following questions. Which argument is the most compelling for Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent? And if you were the Supreme Court, how would you decide the case? Pause the video, read the arguments, and discuss with your group. Now we'll actually look at the real Supreme Court cases that connect with these scenarios. The District of Columbia v. Heller was in 2008 was the first case that dealt with the Second Amendment. It held that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to possess a firearm, doesn't have to be connected with a service in the militia, and is for traditionally lawful purposes such as self-defense at home. They said that Washington's D.C. handgun ban and requirement that lawfully owned rifles and shotguns be kept unloaded and disassembled or bound by a trigger lock violated that guarantee. It also said that the right to bear arms is not unlimited and that gun ownership would continue to be regulated. Because Washington, D.C. is a special status, it's not a state, it did not address self-incorporation or selective incorporation in the 14th Amendment. You can compare this to the Gotham case. Your required case for this unit and the Second Amendment is 2010 McDonald v. City of Chicago. Here, a retired resident lived in Chicago, Morgan Park. The neighborhood became infested with gangs and drug dealers. So, as an experienced hunter who owned shotguns, he believed he could purchase a handgun for personal home defense. Due to the requirement that Chicago had that all firearms in the city be registered, he did so. However, he was refused. Chicago was refusing all handgun registrations after 1982. This is when the city banned all handguns. So he was unable to legally own a handgun. As a result, he sued the city of Chicago. The majority opinion by the Supreme Court held that because of the due process clause of the 14th Amendment, so this means this was selective incorporation, the 14th Amendment, making states follow the Bill of Rights, and it recognized the D.C. v. Heller case. So it reaffirmed that certain firearm restrictions in the D.C. Heller case are assumed permissible. Such restrictions include those to prohibit the possession of firearms by felons or mentally ill, so you can still prohibit guns to some people. Also, you can make laws that are forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive places like schools and government buildings. Or you can impose conditions on the sale of firearms. So in this case, they agreed with D.C. Heller that you are allowed to possess a handgun under the Second Amendment. In this case, they used the 14th Amendment selective incorporation, but they also said there are some limits. This is like the Metropolis case. So last two questions to consider in your group. How are they similar and how are they different? The two cases, D.C. and Heller, and the McDonald v. Chicago. And then quickly look at how does selective incorporation of the 14th Amendment apply and help differentiate the two cases. Again, Washington, D.C. was a federal district. The case with Chicago deals with a state issue. When done working in your groups, work on the McDonald versus City of Chicago worksheet with the Venn diagram. And your homework will be the FRQ. On Monday, we will look at all of our assignments from the past week. 3 FRQs and all the Supreme Court case worksheets.